The first time I realized something was wrong, she kissed me before I had the chance to ask where she'd been. It was almost 2 in the morning. Her hair smelled like rain even though the streets outside were dry. She smiled, apologized for being late, and disappeared into the bathroom before I could say another word. I remember standing in our tiny kitchen, staring at the kettle I'd been boiling for over an hour, wondering why my stomach suddenly felt so heavy. Until then, I would have told anyone we had a boring, comfortable relationship. We'd been together for 4 years. We rented a small apartment, argued over dishes, watched terrible reality shows, and talked about buying a house someday. My parents adored her. My sister treated her like family. I honestly believed I'd already met the person I'd spend the rest of my life with. Looking back, I hate how ordinary everything seemed. Maybe that's why I ignored the late nights at first. She always had an explanation. Extra work. A coworker needing help. Traffic. Her phone battery dying. None of it sounded impossible. I wanted to be the kind of partner who trusted instead of interrogated. Now I wonder if trust and denial are sometimes the exact same thing. At first, her late nights came only once every couple of weeks. Then they became every Friday. After that, they started happening on random Tuesdays, quiet Sundays, even birthdays we'd promised to spend together. She always sounded convincing. My manager asked me to stay. My coworker was having a panic attack. I didn't want to wake you by calling so late. Every excuse had just enough truth to make me feel guilty for doubting her. The strange part wasn't that she came home late. It was how normal she acted afterward. She would climb into bed, wrap herself around me, ask about my day, and make plans for the weekend as if nothing unusual had happened. Meanwhile, I was slowly becoming someone I didn't recognize. I checked the clock every few minutes. I stopped sleeping until I heard her key in the door. I kept rehearsing questions in my head, then swallowing them the moment she smiled. Love has a dangerous way of making you edit reality. Every red flag becomes a misunderstanding. Every uncomfortable feeling becomes something you blame on your own insecurity. I kept choosing trust. I didn't realize I was teaching myself how to ignore my instincts. One evening, I decided I wouldn't text her first. Normally, around 10, I'd ask if everything was okay. She'd send back a heart emoji, tell me she was finishing up, and promise she'd be home soon. That night, I stayed silent. Midnight came. Then 1. Then almost 2. Nothing. When she finally walked through the door, she looked surprised to see me sitting on the couch with the lights still on. "You waited up?" she asked. I couldn't sleep. She leaned down to kiss me, but I noticed she hesitated for just a second, almost as if she was checking my expression before getting too close. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. She studied my face, smiled, and headed for the shower. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. I wasn't planning to look. I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up with a preview. Made it home? No name. Just an unsaved number. Before I could stop myself, another message appeared. "I already miss you." My heart started pounding so hard I could barely hear the water running in the bathroom. Suddenly, every late night she'd ever explained replayed in my head, and for the first time, trust felt less like love and more like blindness. I kept staring at the screen until it went dark. My hands were shaking. I could have unlocked her phone. I knew the passcode. We'd never hidden things from each other before. But somehow that felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready to cross, even after what I'd just seen. So I put the phone exactly where it had been. When she came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel with her hair still dripping, she smiled like nothing had happened. "You look exhausted," she said. "Long day?" I almost laughed. Instead, I asked as casually as I could, "Did work go okay?" She didn't even hesitate. "Yeah. Just overtime again." The lie came so naturally that it scared me more than the message itself. I nodded and pretended to believe her. That night, she fell asleep within minutes. I didn't sleep at all. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd had over the past year. Every cancelled dinner. Every forgotten anniversary plan. Every unexplained delay suddenly fit together in a way I wished it never would. For the first time since we'd met, I was afraid that the woman sleeping beside me wasn't the woman I thought I knew. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I made coffee, asked if she wanted eggs, even joked about how tired we both looked. She laughed, kissed my cheek, and thanked me for breakfast. Watching her smile so effortlessly made me question my own sanity. Maybe I had misunderstood the messages. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. I clung to those possibilities because the alternative was unbearable. Over the next week, I paid attention to things I had ignored before. She started carrying her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. Notifications were suddenly hidden. If I walked into the room while she was texting, the screen would immediately lock. None of those things proved she was cheating. Together, though, they formed a picture I couldn't stop seeing. One Friday, she told me she had another late meeting. An hour later, a mutual friend posted photos from a restaurant across town. In the background, almost hidden behind a group of people, I saw her. She wasn't sitting with coworkers. She was laughing across the table from a man I'd never seen before, looking happier than she had looked with me in months. I must have stared at that photo for an hour. I zoomed in until the image turned blurry, hoping I'd realize I was mistaken. But every time I looked, it was still her. Same jacket. Same necklace I had given her for our anniversary. Same smile. The comments under the post made it even worse. Great seeing everyone tonight. Everyone. As if it were just a casual dinner. I clicked through every picture, searching for another angle. In one of them, the man had his hand resting on the back of her chair. It wasn't intimate enough to prove anything, but it wasn't something strangers usually did either. When she came home after midnight, she looked tired in exactly the way she always claimed work made her feel. Meeting ran late, she sighed, dropping her bag by the door. I looked her straight in the eyes. Really? She didn't flinch. Yeah. Why? For a second, I almost showed her the photos. Instead, I smiled weakly and said, no reason. I hated myself the moment the words left my mouth. I wasn't protecting our relationship anymore. I was protecting her lies because I was terrified of hearing the truth out loud. Everything changed 3 days later because of something completely accidental. She left for work in a hurry and forgot her tablet on the dining table. It wasn't even password protected because we used it to watch movies together. I had no intention of snooping, but a notification appeared across the screen while I was moving it. Last night was worth every risk. The message disappeared before I could read the rest. I just sat there, frozen. After several minutes, I opened the messaging app, telling myself I only wanted to know if I was losing my mind. Instead, I found months of conversations with the same number. There were jokes only couples share. Plans for weekends she claimed were spent working. Photos she had never sent me. Then I reached one message that made my chest tighten. Him, when are you finally going to tell him? Her, soon. I just need more time. The replies after that were even harder to read. She wrote that she loved him. That she cared about me too. That she didn't know how to leave without destroying everyone's lives. In that moment, every excuse, every late night, every doubt collapsed into one undeniable truth that I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I spent the entire day walking around the city with my phone turned off, trying to understand how someone could say I love you to two different people without falling apart. Maybe she had. Maybe she was just better at hiding it. By the time I got home, she was already there, sitting on the couch with a worried expression. Where have you been? She asked. I've been calling you all day. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. I know. Her face changed instantly. What do you mean? I picked up the forgotten tablet from the table and placed it between us. You left this behind. She didn't touch it. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, You read it. I read enough. The room felt impossibly quiet. Then she started crying before I had even raised my voice. I'm sorry, she said over and over. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Instead, the only thing I could force out was, How long? She closed her eyes. Almost a year. It felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. I realized I hadn't just lost the woman I loved. I'd lost the last year of my life to a lie. What about all those nights? I finally asked. She wiped her face with trembling hands and couldn't look at me. I was with him. Hearing the words spoken out loud hurt more than discovering the messages. There was no room left for denial. No misunderstanding. No harmless explanation. Who is he? She hesitated. A man from work. The same work you kept blaming for everything? She nodded without saying a word. I laughed, but it sounded nothing like laughter. It was the kind of broken sound that escapes when someone realizes their reality has been rewritten. Were you ever going to tell me? I wanted to. But you didn't. I was scared. I stood up and started pacing around the apartment. Scared of what? Losing me? You already did. She buried her face in her hands and cried harder. I never meant for it to happen, she whispered. It started as friendship. Then everything got complicated. I stopped walking and looked at her. No, I said quietly. You made choices. That's not the same thing as things getting complicated. For the first time that evening, she had no answer. The silence between us said more than any excuse ever could. The conversation lasted for hours, and somehow every answer created 2 new questions. I asked whether she loved him. She nodded before quickly adding, I love you too. Those 4 words felt almost insulting. Don't, I said. Please don't tell me you love me in the same breath. She cried harder, insisting that what we had was real, that our years together mattered, that she never planned to hurt me. But you kept hurting me, I replied. You just made sure I didn't know it. She admitted the affair had started after a work conference almost a year earlier. They had shared drinks, complained about their relationships, and kissed before the night was over. It was supposed to be one mistake. Instead, it became a second life. She told him she was staying late at the office. She told me she was helping coworkers. Both of us believed her. The most painful part wasn't learning how many times she lied. It was realizing how carefully those lies had been built. Every excuse had been prepared in advance. Every apology had been rehearsed. While I was planning our future, she had been managing 2 completely different realities. I packed a small bag before sunrise. She was sitting on the bedroom floor, wrapped in a blanket, watching me fold clothes into an old duffel bag we used for weekend trips. Neither of us had slept. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said a dozen different ways. Please don't leave like this, she whispered. I stopped for a moment, holding one of my shirts. How else am I supposed to leave? She didn't answer. Instead, she stood up and reached for my hand. I pulled it away without thinking. The look on her face made me feel guilty for a split second, and I hated that even then, I was worrying about her feelings. My parents are going to ask questions, she said. So are mine. She covered her face and started crying again. I'll end it with him. The words came too late. If you wanted him gone, I replied quietly, you had almost a year to make that decision. I zipped my bag and walked toward the front door. She called my name one last time. I paused, but I never turned around. Then I stepped outside, leaving behind the apartment that had once felt like home. Leaving the apartment didn't end anything. It only marked the beginning of a different kind of pain. I moved into my older brother's spare room, telling everyone we just needed some space. I couldn't bring myself to admit the truth. Saying the words out loud would make everything feel even more real. She called every day. When I blocked her number, she started sending emails. When I ignored those, handwritten letters began showing up at my brother's house. Every message said the same thing in different words. She was sorry. She had made the biggest mistake of her life. She wanted one chance to fix it. I read every letter. Then I put them back into their envelopes without replying. The hardest conversations were with our families. My mother kept asking when we'd get back together. Her parents insisted relationships survived worse than this. Even mutual friends encouraged me to forgive her because everyone deserves a second chance. None of them had spent a year waiting by the window, believing every excuse. None of them had watched trust disappear piece by piece. For the first time in my life, I understood how lonely heartbreak could feel, even when you were surrounded by people trying to help. About 2 months after I left, she asked to meet one last time. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe where we used to spend lazy Sunday mornings together. It felt strange sitting across from her again. She looked thinner, exhausted, as if she hadn't been sleeping either. For a few minutes, we talked about nothing important. Then she quietly said, "I ended things with him." I nodded. "I thought you'd want to know." "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information." She looked down at her coffee. "I chose you." The words should have meant everything. Instead, they meant almost nothing. "You didn't choose me," I answered. "You chose me after he was no longer enough." She immediately shook her head. "That's not true." "Maybe it isn't. But that's how it feels." Tears filled her eyes again. "I know I destroyed your trust." I smiled sadly. "You didn't just destroy trust. You changed the way I see every memory we shared." Birthdays, vacations, quiet evenings on the couch, every happy moment had become something I questioned. That was the part one couldn't forgive. She had stolen the certainty that those memories had ever been real, that meeting was the last time I ever saw her. A week later, one of our mutual friends told me she had transferred to another office in a different city. I didn't ask where. Knowing the details wouldn't change anything. Life moved forward because it had to. I found a new apartment, threw myself into work, and slowly rebuilt routines that didn't include waiting for someone to come home after midnight. The silence in the evenings felt unbearable at first. Eventually, it became peaceful. Even so, the damage stayed with me. When someone texted me that they'd be late, my mind immediately imagined the worst. If a phone screen lit up face down on a table, I noticed. If plans changed at the last minute, I questioned them, even when there was no reason to. I hated becoming that person. The betrayal didn't end when the relationship ended. It followed me into every new friendship and every date afterward. People often say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. Time teaches you how to carry the weight. Some days it feels lighter. Some days it settles on your chest exactly the way it did the night she first walked through the door at 2 a.m. It's been several years now, and I still catch myself looking at the clock when someone I care about says they'll be home soon. Old habits don't disappear as easily as people think. I've dated since then. I've met kind people who never gave me a reason to doubt them. Still, I sometimes feel myself waiting for the hidden message, the unbelievable excuse, or the late-night apology that never makes sense. I hate that someone else's choices changed the way I experience love. The strangest part is that I don't miss the relationship anymore. I miss the version of myself who believed trust was simple. The man who waited with dinner on the table thought loyalty was automatic if two people loved each other enough. I don't believe that now. Sometimes I wonder whether she ever found the happiness she risked everything for. I honestly don't know. And after all this time, I don't think I want to. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that betrayal rarely begins with one huge decision. It begins with small lies that become easier to tell every day. By the time the truth finally appears, the relationship has usually been over for much longer than anyone realizes.